Department here at FIU. I am also program director for one of the math labs, or I say one and a half of the math labs because we're building a third one on the North Campus as we speak. And I am also the coordinator for MGF 1106 and MGF 1107, which is finite math and social choice math. And I have also been involved in this, over the summer and this semester, with redesigning Math 1105 and Math 1147, which is college algebra and pre-calculus trig. So I kind of have my fingers in all of most of the 1,000 level math courses that we have here at the university. And one of the major things that we've done in all of those courses is transform them to either partially hybrid or completely hybrid with massive use of LAs in our classroom. So I want to talk for a minute sort of how this history of change came about within the classroom. What happened was we built our first math lab in 2012, and we started just with Math 1105 in that lab in order to fix what was traditionally the terrible DFW rates. Pass rates, I should say, in Math 1105 college algebra. They were about 30%. There was Title V funding in order to build the lab. And over the course of time, they saw that this 30% rate actually went up to 60, 70% rate through course design as well. And in the process of teaching, I was also teaching finite math, and I said, hey, you know what? I would love to teach finite math in this mastery model. Well, can I do it? And one of the things I love about being at FIU is if you say, hey, can I do this? Someone usually says, sure, go ahead. If you want to do it, go ahead. If you're willing to take that on, by all means. So I taught a semester of finite math using the mastery math model, meaning my students had class time. They had lab hours that they had to do every week with LA assistants. And it was bumpy that first semester or two as we did it because we had LAs who were typically used to teaching, who were in that STEM track. So they were used to helping out with college algebra. And all of a sudden we had finite math, and these students had never seen or taken finite math, and there was a lot of back and forth between how we were training our LAs for this totally new course of stuff. They never took statistics, right, which is something that we cover. They never looked at probability, which is something that we cover. So there was some bumpiness in getting that through, but we expanded to further sections. And then ultimately, actually, we ended up opening a second math lab, which hosts MGF 1106, MGF 1107, and Stats 2122, and we recruit LAs specifically for those courses. So we actually have different recruit going on for Lab 1 versus Lab 2, right? So we look for a different type of student, who's successful in different types of courses for those particular labs so that they can help our students. So on top of that adoption of the mastery math model, we really had this, or I had this really strong desire to create a more engaging classroom experience. I'd been teaching for almost 20 years at that point. I love teaching, and I thought I was doing a decent job at it, but I really started feeling like, how can I get my students more involved in this? And we had this great professional development one spring break where we learned about active learning, which if you don't know what it is and then you all of a sudden learn what it is, you're like, oh, this is a thing. And it's a thing that's been around for a long time, but if nobody's ever told you it's a thing, you don't realize that this is something that could be done. And I know that there's a lot of speculation as how that can be done in a math classroom. How do you do active learning in a math classroom? How do you flip a math classroom? Well, we worked hard and we did it. We did it for finite math. We did it for social choice math. We've now done it for college algebra. I did it a semester for intermediate algebra, but we've eliminated that course now. That's a talk for another time. And we're doing it in part, we are doing it completely actually in the pre-calc trig class that I'm piloting this semester as well. So we've managed to do this by the use of the math lab. I can't tell you that it would be feasible without that. And with the use of our LAs as well. I am a firm believer that you really cannot have active learning in a classroom without actually having LAs in the classroom to help you out. So to let you know what the size of our classes that I'm talking about, in MGF 1106, we were supposed to have caps of 100. Some of them went up to 120 this semester. In MGF 1107, social choice, those are caps of 48 to 50. though that will not change. And in Math 1105, college algebra, the cap is 150-ish, although I think we have a section with 230 this semester. So with the LAs in the classroom, we have successfully worked to create these active learning classrooms where the LAs help out. The ratio that I have found personally that works is in a 50-student class is to have 2 LAs and the instructor, right? So that's pretty much what we're looking at. Now, on top of that, they did start a provost LA initiative, which pays for part of the funding to have our LAs in our classrooms. And that's been a big plus for us because what we've done is we've recruited our LAs for the lab and then we steal them and we put them in our classrooms. So the prep that's being done every week for the lab LAs preps them for the next week for their classes as well. And I'll talk in a little while about the big pluses of having that same pool of LAs working in the classroom and working in the lab. So to let you know what the components of these classes are. So we have pre-class assignments that the students do that we have created. They are due the night before class. Did it not pop up? Okay. So let's talk about what some of the components are, what the main components are that our students have. So first of all, the students have pre-class assignments. You all have one on your table. I'll have you guys look at those in a minute. They have pre-class assignments. They are due the night before at midnight. Our students, we use Canvas, so they upload them to Canvas. We grade them 0, 1, 2 points, pretty much. Yes?
How would they write in the numbers, or would they scan it and upload it?
They can either type it in on Word, or they can write it, take a picture, and upload it, right? I don't think anybody scans anymore. I think they all just take pictures with their phones and upload it that way. Those are the pre-class assignments. Those are what they do before class time. Next, they have in-class worksheets. So we've created a boatload of content for them to be done during class time. Those are not graded, but they do work in group work when we have that. I love having this classroom when I can, as I said before, except for the fact that my back is always to someone if I'm standing here. So they have in-class worksheets where they are working in groups with the help of LAs. Post-class, they have homework. They have a lab requirement, a weekly, in my classes, 2-hour lab requirement where they come into the math lab. Those of you who are here tomorrow, you will tour it and come by and see. They work in the math lab where they have the help of LAs and faculty. And we also have quizzes and exams, and they take the same exams in the math lab as well. So those are sort of the different components of the class. So what I want to do is jump right into the pre-class assignment. What do you think students gain? I had a question. If the students are doing this before class, how do they get LA help? Well, our lab is open 6 out of 7 days a week, so they can come to the lab. This semester, we actually started having pre-class workshops that the students can sign up for. We have a nice glass room in our math lab too. And our LAs, we built content, and the LAs will work using the pre-class assignment, and we'll go through it. They don't answer the questions for them, but they have the students discussing the questions. And we have some students that show up consistently, and they sort of catch on as the semester progresses, but it's sort of one of those things that we've thrown in there. So they definitely can have the LA help beforehand. Yes?
When you said that your lab is open
Yes.
6 days a week,
Yes.
I mean, how much or what is the mandatory contact hours?
2 hours a week. For college algebra, it's 3 hours a week. So they have to be in the math lab. They have to do 2 hours every week, from Monday morning through Sunday evening.
Yes, but in addition, you are saying that they might come in any way.
Yes, we have students who spend 12 hours a week in the math lab. It just depends on the students. We have students who spend exactly 120 minutes. I am timing it. I have 1 minute left as I'm walking out the door. And we have students, who come and spend a lot of time there. Yeah.
And typically, what fraction of students, those who are enrolled, what's the difference between your contact hours and the additional hours of support?
So I actually don't know the answer to that question. I don't know how many of our students are doing more than the 2 hours. We have that data, we just have never run it. We could look at it, I have no idea. But I do know that the large majority of our students do complete their 2 hours every week. Their 2 hours, lab attendance is 7% of their grade. And it's getting them to do time on task. So one of the things we say at orientation at the very beginning of the semester is, this is the easiest 7 points you'll ever get in any class. We're asking you to do your work here instead of at home, or instead of in 20 feet away in another part of the library. We want you to just do it here so that you can get help. And so that 7% we hope is a boon, and we say, it's the difference between a 63 and a 70, and on average, our students do complete their hours. What about the LAs? What do you think they gain from having students come into the lab working on their pre-class assignments? I struggled with this one a little bit. I had to think about it, and the truth is we can ask our LAs as well if there's something.
Yeah, they have to prep for the class too, so it kind of feeds into their weekly prep.
Good, it feeds into their weekly prep. They can see what students are struggling with. That was another thought that I had. Guys, do you have anything to add to that? Go ahead.
I mean, sometimes as an LA, I'm gonna admit that I don't know everything, so sometimes I actually get stumped. And that I've been on a call, another LA help me out, but it's interesting to see just review things, or sometimes students see things in a way that is different or interesting and perhaps easier. So it helps me get a new perspective on certain problems, or it helps me just review problems that I may not remember how to do or know how to do in a way that a student won't understand. So that kind of helps me backtrack a little bit and stuff like that.
I think it also helps for the students to see when an LA doesn't know the answer, because then they realize, oh, okay, they're students just like me, and they'll call someone else over. And I always say that when I'm in the lab, we can have stats students who will call me over to answer a question, and my response is usually, I cannot help you, and an LA can help you much better than I can, and I'll call someone else over to help them. And I think that's important for students to see. No one is the purveyor of all knowledge. It just doesn't work that way, right? We can be really good at some things, we can need help with others.
Watch a video or...
So they go into Canvas, and that's where it is. And if you read at the top, it should say, read through section 4D. So they have access to their textbook, whether it's online or they have the hard copy of the textbook. My assumption is they are going to open it up and look for the answer.
And it's not a problem, they would just be expected to read through...
Yes.
How to... Okay.
Yes. Sometimes they just Google answers, and then I get the wrong answer. And I can tell after a while, you Googled. But they can pull up the textbook, and that's where they'll find it. There are also videos for them, and there's also PowerPoints for them in Canvas. So the truth is the PowerPoints really pull out everything they need from the textbook. So if they were just to open up the PowerPoint, they would find it there as well. Those are things that we've created. Okay? So the last question is what do you gain? Right? What do you gain from having the LAs help the students with these assignments before class? And what do you gain from these assignments? This is a little off topic, but while we're talking about pre-class assignments, what do you gain from giving these assignments and from having the LAs help your students?
Your students are coming into class all kind of on the same baseline of whatever the content is for that.
Good, hopefully.
Hopefully.
Right? Yeah.
The terminology, so I'm a non-math person. Yes, I know I'm in the wrong room, but I run a tutoring center, so and math is our pain point, if you will. But I'm a word person, and what I constantly see with students that I work with across STEM is they want the formula, they don't know what any of those terms mean, so X bar, they'll ask it every single time they walk in the room. So what is X? It's we just went over this, did you not write it down? And so I love that there's some basic terminology so that when you come into class and we use the language of the discipline, that everybody isn't lost.
Right. Because math is a language. Right? So one of the reasons that we do this is because we needed to cut time. Right? We're moving to hybrid. You're only teaching for an hour and 15 minutes a week. The only way to do this is to make this assumption that my students are going to learn something before they come to class. Now, do they? Some. Do they copy? Some. Do they write it down and then not think about it by the time they get to class? Of course, that's the case. That happens across the board. But they're still being held responsible for it. Which means there is this assumption when I walk in, I am not talking about this. I am not putting this formula up on the board. I am not reviewing this formula. You need to know this formula, or you need to open up Canvas and look it up, right? But you need to know this coming in. And it's interesting because I'm also a hybrid fellow, and so one of the things I did this semester was go around and visit our 1,000-level hybrid classes, and one of the mistakes, I hate to say mistakes that I was seeing, is that instructors would start off by going through the pre-class worksheet. Well, if you go through the pre-class worksheet, students will find no value in it. They will not bother to do it, not bother to study it, not bother to think about it, or at least they'll just upload it. But if you're going to walk in and start talking about that content, they're going to very quickly learn that there's no value for me in doing this. What the value is if you grade some of them before you come to class. So they're due at midnight. So yes, I have 70% of my students are uploading them at 11:59 p.m., right? But 30% of them are doing it earlier in the week. And I can grade those because whatever, I'm sitting at home, I'm watching TV, I'll open Canvas and grade a few of them. It gives me the opportunity to come in and talk about the mistakes that I saw. So that's the advantage for you, is that you can walk in and say, okay, a lot of you struggled with the difference between what an interest payment is and what a principal payment is. And then you can talk about it without saying, now I'm going over the pre-class assignments. And I think that there's a big difference there. Again, that's on the instructor, that's the instructor's end of having to come prepared to class with knowledge of what your students know and don't know and how to talk about it. Other questions? Okay, so let's move to in-class. So now you've done your pre-class assignment, it's class time, and we're gonna have a class worksheet for you guys to work on. Now that you have spent a few minutes, and you can see what it's like, by the way, this is what it's like in the classroom. Multiply it by, I guess, 4. In a finite math class, the room would be full, right? But this is what it looks like, right? I don't stand up here very much. I actually talk very little in the class. It just depends on the particular class, which, by the way, always ends up being a complaint. My teacher doesn't teach, but you're going to expect that when you shift to active learning. That's what you're going to hear, right? That's okay. I'm okay with not teaching because they're learning, so that's fine with me. But as you can see, so this is what we do in class. These worksheets are all prepared ahead of time. We tweak them as we go, but sometimes they just work well from semester to semester. And this worksheet, I think, also gives you actually a good feel for what the class is actually about. We're trying to get students to think about the math that they're doing, the math that they use in real life, the choices that they make. The choice between, a 15-year mortgage versus a 30-year mortgage, and why would you make those choices? Yes?
So students don't submit these for a grade?
No, the in-class worksheets are not for a grade. They keep them. My hope is that they're their notes for class, right? That's what they are. They take them with them. I tell them at the beginning of the semester, make sure you have a folder. And often what I'll do is, for example, in this worksheet, right? So we did the savings plan formula the week before. So they're like, I don't know, remember what the formula is, and that's fine. I don't need them to memorize this formula. But my response to them will be either, 1, open up Canvas, it's there, or, because they're using their phones in class anyways, I might as well put them to good use. Or 2, pull your worksheet from last week. You have it in last week's worksheet, right? So in one of 2 places they'll find that information, all right? So, we're going to go through a similar set of questions. What do your students gain from having LAs in the classroom? What do you gain from having LAs in the classroom? And what do LAs gain from being in the classroom? So 3 questions. They sound similar, but they're really different in the context of in-class work. Okay, so take a minute and you can discuss it with your group and think about the answers to this.
Yeah.
Notice, my LAs, they're not just standing in the corner, right, waiting for a student to raise their hand. That's not the way it works. That's not how we train them in the math lab, right? That's not what we do. They walk around. They look at what you're doing. They keep you on task. They see if you have questions, because we know that if you wait for a student to ask a question, you might be waiting a very long time, right? So, what did LAs gain from being in the class? Yes. Yes, yes.
I think one of the things that the students gain or the LAs gain?
I started with LAs, but you can talk about what students gain, that's fine.
Okay. Well, I think the students, like as you can see them, they're all like standing up. Number one thing I thought, proximity. They have proximity to the students where you may be on one side of the class, but they are all around and they're always, as you know, proximity. If you have a student sleeping or off task, number one thing, go stand by them.
Right.
So I think that's
Yes. definitely. Like I said, students won't necessarily ask a question, especially if you're not across the room. But if you're standing here and you're doing this, or the LA is doing this, they might say, oh yeah, you can do number 4, and that makes a big difference. Good, what else?
What is typically your student to LA ratio?
So, like I said, we like to have in a 50 student class, 2 LAs and the instructor. So it's really 50 to 3, because I consider I do not stand up at the front of the classroom doing nothing while in class. I'm there with them.
Okay.
Right, so in my 120 student class, I have 4 LAs. It's a little tight, I would love to have a 5th, but we don't always have enough, as many as we need. So,
Funding or because of LA
because of LAs, because of recruitment, actually. This fall in particular, we had a dearth of applicants. So, hopefully the spring, that will not be the case. We also have less classes in the spring, because we end up having a smaller enrollment in the spring, which I'm sure is probably the norm across the board. So it will be less of an issue. So what do LAs gain? What do you think the LAs gain from class time? Because it should be valuable to them as well, aside from just the $10 they make for the hour. Yes.
If I had had that experience as an undergrad, I feel like I would have gone into grad school so much more prepared because you're expected to have conversations and explain things. And I mean, even with your professors, like, you don't go to class and wait for someone to tell you the answers. You're the one that's proactive about having the knowledge and bringing something. So every LA should apply for grad school.
Yes, I think that's great. Yes, good. What else? They definitely gain confidence. Yes, I agree with that. And they also gain the ability to know when to ask questions themselves, right? Oh, I don't know how to answer that. We'll figure this out. What else do you think LAs gain?
Depth of understanding.
I didn't hear you, what?
Depth of understanding.
Depth of understanding. It's not just surface. They're digging deeper into the questions in the content. That's exactly right. Good. I think they're also, if you have a good instructor up front, they're gaining good modeling, right? They're seeing what good instruction looks like. They may have other classes where they have their own instructors are terrible instructors. And so if you have a good instructor in the front, then they're learning something themselves, right? They're learning, oh, that's how this should be done. And by the way, often they will go to their other classes and their reaction will be like, oh my God, why is this class being run like this? I know what a good classroom looks like, right? Guys, what do you gain from being in the classroom, class time? What would you say?
Definitely, as everyone's mentioned, we refine our understanding. So we go in with a certain level of understanding already, but once you go and try to live it, you're in the moment where you have to teach and communicate that knowledge to somebody else. That's probably the best test to determine whether or not you fully understand that material. And so by constantly being in a process of refining yourself and refining your knowledge, that's really the only way to evolve and keep evolving. So it's a really great experience for that.
Yes.
Okay, so just to get a sense of the structure of this class.
Yes.
Once, like this class we're in right now.
75 minutes, yes.
One time a week
Yes.
plus lab.
Yes,
So we'll like meet on Wednesdays, they go to lab whenever they want.
whenever they want to during the week, yes.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that's what I was trying to.
Yes, it's hybrid, yes. It is a 3-credit course, yes. Yeah, we meet for 75 minutes because it's a hybrid class. Right. So what do you gain from having LAs in the classroom? That's an important piece because it has to be of value to you too, yes.
I think the most important thing I get from the LS, they are like a two-way traffic, because if the students are more comfortable to express their concern or unhappiness, if I have gone fast or the test was hard, to them, and every single day after the lecture, they actually communicate those things to me so that I do not make the same mistake or rectify myself in the next lecture. The other aspect is that they also go back to them about from my side. They may say, oh, you think it is hard, but this chapter is hard, so you have to probably work hard and you spend more time. So that way, it works like a two-way traffic, and it actually provides a room for me not to make the same mistake or think in a different way put more time on a particular topic, solve some problems that I was originally not intending to. So that's a big thing, I think.
Right. I think that is a big plus. Students are often intimidated by their instructors, right? How many of you have students who come to office hours?
I swear that I'm the most approachable instructor.
I do too.
And a student told me this semester that I was intimidated.
Right, so I would think the same
I-
of myself, and they don't show. They don't come to office hours, right? They don't. But they will go to the lab and they will ask the LAs questions. So the LAs tend to be more approachable because they're students. And I think that that's a big plus for you. So you can get a feel from the LAs as to what the questions are that the students are having. And just, in all honesty, just from a very technical perspective, by having the LAs in the classroom, you can walk around and visit everybody. I have 120 students in my class, and on average, 95 to 100 show up every week, right? I get around multiple times to all of the tables because I know I can spend a few minutes here talking because my LAs are taking care of everything else, right? Also, if there's a table that's struggling, I can say to one of my LAs, pay attention to them, because I can't spend 40 minutes with them. But one of the LAs can sort of have them in their mind, like that's sort of your area. Keep your eye on that table because they're having an issue, all right? So I'm going to skip past the post-class, because I think that a lot of that sort of ties in together. I do have a post-class assignment if you want to see it. They do a written homework every week in social choice that they also then upload to Canvas and we grade. But one of the points that I want to talk about, because it says, you know, how will you gain, how do students gain from having the LA help in the lab? Because we haven't really talked about that. And I said at the beginning that I wanted to discuss sort of the pros of having our lab LAs in the classroom. Yes?
So your assignments, pre-class, in-class, post-class, are they addressing the same topic?
It's, yes, within a week. It's addressing the same.
So the degree of difficulty increases?
Yes. The degree of difficulty increases. The pre-class is something that I know they can open a textbook and look up and find the answers to. In class, we're trying to then work on problems actively so that we can help. And then post-class, some of the homework questions are easy, right? There's a range, right? So there's a range of questions. Do you have a question?
Yeah, the lab hours that they're required is post-class, I guess.
Or either one. It's at any
Because
point.
it's
It's
during
throughout the week, yes.
And those assignments that they do in the computer lab, are those on publisher software?
So they are. We use Pearson, we use MyLabs Plus, we use one of their textbooks. So they have homework,
So you don't have to grade all that.
30 to 40 questions. No, those we don't grade, but they do in social choice math, they do a conceptual, we call it conceptual homework. They do a written homework every week that we do grade. Yes.
So how long does it take so you said you have about 120 students in the class.
No, social choice, I have 50. There's 50, 48 to 50. How long does it take to grade? You're asking the wrong person. I do things fast, so I'm not really the best judge at that. Like, I can be at a stoplight and I can open the Canvas app on my phone and grade 7 pre-class assignments in like 10 seconds. You know, just scan, et cetera, et cetera. So it just depends. They also, by the way, I will add that they also do a video reflection pre-class. So every pre-class assignment, there are 2 of them. There's the worksheet, and then they watch a video and answer a question. Like, you know, I'm trying to think of what it is this week. What do you think are the advantages of taking out a mortgage for a house? Or they write a paragraph, and you just skim through them and grade those.
And so where do they get those videos from?
Everything's in Canvas. We've pulled them, most of them I've pulled from YouTube, cute things that I think are interesting for them to watch, right? When we do the week on budgets, right, the question is, what's one thing that you spend money on every month that you consider to be a necessity that other people might consider to be a luxury, right? So we get a lot of eyebrows and nails, and one semester I had a student write, my big gulp, I need to have a big gulp every single day. Like, that was his necessity, and he was not giving it up no matter what, right? And then that ties in later when we talk about investing and putting into your 401k, what could you eliminate from your budget that you could then move in that direction? Yeah?
You keep saying we grade them instead of LAs help you grade them?
The LAs do not help us grade them. No, I grade them. As the instructors, but we're teaching, we as in myself, as in the instructors, But it's a hybrid class, so you're only teaching an hour and 15 minutes a week. The assumption is you're spending you're being paid for a 3-credit course, you're spending the other time grading. Okay. So I wanted to talk again about the LAs in the lab. One of the things that I have found that's a big plus is that the students see their LAs in class, and then they see their LAs in the lab. And there's this great connection that they make where they feel so much more comfortable. Is that what you were talking about before? Okay, they feel so much more comfortable asking questions because this is a person that they know, right? Sometimes they'll say, well, when is so-and-so in the lab? I want to go to the lab during their lab hours when they're working.
So they don't have scheduled lab time?
They do not
go
have
in there,
scheduled lab time, no. Lab is open, they come in.
Their favorite LA is there.
Yes, that may be when they decide to come.
And are your labs across courses, so there are people from college algebra and people from finite math and in there at the same time in the same
No, lab 1 is college algebra and intermediate algebra, and we also have open lab hours for pre-calc, and I think trig can come as well. They don't have required hours this semester, but they can come.
So there's a dedicated lab for this class that we're talking about right now?
No, the second lab is for MGF 1106, MGF 1107, and STA 2122. So every week, our LAs have a 90-minute prep meeting. So I actually don't prep my LAs for the next week. I don't meet with my LAs on a weekly basis. Because they are lab LAs, they are prepped in the lab prep meeting for the content for the next week. That also, for 3 courses, yes. And that also actually alleviates some of my time because I'm not meeting for an hour with my LAs every week.
Are there also grad students in these labs all the time?
No, never. Well, except for Jerry. Jerry is our lab manager in lab 2, and he's a grad student, and he is our go-to person as far as that goes. But no. The LAs are undergrads. Yeah.
Since the inception of your math lab, has it always been LAs in the math lab?
Yes.
Or have you had tutors ever in there?
No.
It's always just been.
It's always been the LA model. Yes, the mastery model within using LAs. Yes.
This question may be more for the student, but when you become somebody's favorite LA in class A, do you notice that they come to you for questions in other classes that they take later?
I've seen it that when I LA for Calc 1, as I'm still a student, I'll be in the library and they'll come up to me and say, all right, can you LA for Calc 2 as well? Because they feel comfortable with me or they feel comfortable with the way I explain something.
So the answer is yes then?
Yeah, they'll come up to you randomly and they'll be like, can I get any help with this, or can you LA for this too?
Right, are you teaching in the next class, right? Yeah.
What do you do with your math grad students? Where are they? What are they doing?
So, I don't know. I'm actually going to say I'm assuming they're TAs. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
Are you a math major?
No. No, he's not. He's
Well, I
studying
won't hold
Asian
it against
studies. That's okay. I don't hold it against him either, by the way. So they are, we just started a PhD program this year. The irony is that many of our PhD students are actually our instructors who have joined the PhD program. Yes.
Oh.
So there are current instructors who've been with
Right.
us for 2-3 years who have actually enrolled in the PhD program.
But there wasn't a PhD.
There was not a PhD. There was a master's program. They're TAs. They're not. They're, No. So any other questions? Because I want to show you briefly some slides I can show you if you want to see about whether or not it's working. Any questions? Okay. So we send a survey. This is a survey from the spring. This is from the MGF 1106, MGF 1107 students. In the classroom, how much do the LAs help you to succeed in this course? So you can see that together, we have 83% that have a lot or a moderate amount, right? You can't really be in one of these classrooms and not have an LA affect you. It would be very hard as a student for that not to be the case. Yes?
Did you also ask what grade they got?
So as I said, that data is within this, but I don't have it. I haven't pulled it that way.
I want to ask you because the note alone would not necessarily mean something wrong.
Yes, by the way, yes, that's true. That's true. We do have that data, 100%. Yes, because students put in their Panther IDs when they put in their IDs for this survey. So it's linked specifically to them. I've never run it that way. I haven't thought about it that way. If you're, yeah. Yes. All of the courses have LAs. They are all hybrid, they all have LAs. All of the MGF 1106, MGF 1107, MAC 1105, and some of the MAC 1147. And then if faculty wants, they can have LAs. But it is, in those 3,000 level courses, it's given to them. They don't have to choose them, they don't have to search for them. It's, oh, your class is at 1 o'clock. Here are the 3 LAs who are going to be in your class through the math lab. Okay. Okay. If you're working on a problem in class, how easy is it to get help? I love this because this is just fantastic. This is 90% of students say they can usually get help or always get help when they need it, which shows you that you don't have students who are sitting there struggling in the back of the class. It's just not happening, right? We're on top of them. Indicate how much you agree with this statement. I feel comfortable asking questions. I feel comfortable making mistakes. I feel comfortable participating, right? This is all group work, active learning. Students are not just sitting, scribbling in their own notebook. That's not what's happening. We're encouraging them. The LAs are encouraging the students to work together, right? When I come over to a group and I answer a question or a student gets something right, I say to them, great, now explain it to them. And I actually turn around and walk away before they can say, wait. Like, no, I'm done here. One of you knows how to do it. Now you explain it to the rest of the group. I'm moving on, right? So they feel comfortable. They feel comfortable making mistakes and participating. And to me, that's important. I had this one already. Let's see. In the classroom. I had this one already too. Oh, I'm going backwards. That would explain why. All right. Do you agree with these statements about your math class experience? Having LAs in the classroom made my learning experience more enjoyable, and working in groups made my learning experience more enjoyable. You know, we rarely ask math students if they like learning, right? We just look at if they're passing, if they're doing well on their tests. We want to know, is this affecting you? Is it making class time? Do you want to come to class? The fact that out of 120 students, I have 95 to 100 showing up every week says class time is valuable. May not be entirely enjoyable, but it at least is valuable to them, right? Coming to class is valuable. In the math lab, how much did the learning assistants help you succeed in this math course? So this is an interesting question to me because we do use Pearson, and so most of the questions have helped me solve this, which is what a lot of students often resort to. So they may do that sooner than raise their hand and ask an LA question. So for me, this was important. You know, we have not yet pulled away from having that because of the volume of students that we have, and maybe at some point we'll remove that as an aid within the courses, but it's still there, which is why I think these numbers look the way they look. I would love to think that these numbers look the way they look because class time is so dynamic and fantastic that they don't have any questions when they come to the math lab. I don't think that's the case, maybe for some, but I think this is an interesting slide as well. You know, again, more questions. How do you, these again are about LAs, right? The LAs seem to enjoy helping students. They're patient with students. They understand the course material. They make students feel confident that they can learn. That's a really, really fantastic question, right? So the question is are these LAs helping the students outside of just teaching me the material? Right, I think these are great questions, and I really look forward. This is the data from the spring semester because it's the first time we ran it. I'm looking forward to seeing what this fall semester looks like. So here are our pass rates for finite math and social choice. The blue are the non-mastery. That's before we went to using the math lab. As you can see for finite math, as I had mentioned earlier, we started with a few sections in the math lab while the regular traditional sections were still going on. That's why there's an overlap. But it was successful enough that we shifted all of the classes in that direction. Social choice, we just made that shift all at once. Okay, so we moved in that direction. This is obviously through the spring. We don't include summer. I don't have summer on this because it's just a skewed data to some extent because we have a lot of. I'm sorry?
Is it the same instructor spring and fall for finite math?
It totally depends. I've been teaching finite math for several semesters. It's not, I would not say that that is semester dependent. I would say that in the spring, it always dips in the spring. I don't know why, but I find that's the case.
It may be.
That's exactly
It could be, and in the spring, are you getting students who had failed at the previous semester? I don't know, but I think that most of our math classes look this way across the board, that there is this dip, and then, by the way, summer jumps up, right? So you have summer, fall, spring, and then summer is always higher, because we have transient students who come in, and some of them, I was a transient student who was a math major at Columbia, and I did some math courses at FIU in the summer, and I imagine that threw the curve off to some extent, right? So that's just the nature of it,
On the previous data you were showing, the effectiveness of LA.
Yes.
Do you intend to study the effect also of Pearson guidance to help them to see how it's automated?
We do ask that question. We ask that. What other outside sources do you use? We do ask them. That is one of the questions that we ask them. Do we specifically ask them about helping to solve this? I don't think we do. I think we used to. I don't know that we do anymore.
Interesting
To know,
Yeah.
right? I'm sure they're using it. More interesting to me, by the way, than the pass rates, I like looking at the drop rates. And I just this morning actually added in fall 18, this current semester, because I realized I didn't have it on there, and I can pull that, right, because I know what the drop rates are. And wow, I was amazed. We have 3.5% in social choice. That is unbelievable to me. The same thing with finite math. Our drop rates are dropping, and I'm so happy to see that. That means, again, what does that say to me? Hopefully it says to me that students are staying in class. They're finding it worthwhile. Yes? So we definitely have had an issue of LAs not knowing how to use them. I have not heard any faculty complaining at all about having LAs in their classroom. Okay. That has not been a thing. But because they are hybrid classes, they also have to go through the hybrid training in order to teach these classes. And in the course of doing that, the pedagogy is there. It's explained to them. They understand why this is a better way. They also are associated with the math lab, and so they see the LAs in the math lab. They see the advantages of it. So no, I've never had an instructor say, I don't want LAs in my classroom. Yeah.
I know. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you guys. Have a great day. Enjoy the rest.